Hey guys, today we're going to be creating this live search using Vue.js with NodeJS on the back end and MongoDB as the database, which is where all of these results come from. And let me just show you how it works, and then so sorry no results because we went a bit too far there, and it just works like this, very simple. Again, sorry no results, we just put in absolute gobbledygooch and nothing's going to work. But other than that, say we go, so it works like that as well, it just automatically guesses it. It's limited to 10 results, so it can't have any more than 10 results. But it shouldn't be too, it's not too, yeah, it also, capitals, that also works as well. But yeah, it's not too complicated to figure out what this is doing. If this interests you, then keep watching. So I've already set up the design for this tutorial, just that I don't waste time doing that, and we could spend the runtime of this tutorial just going through the live search functionality. So if we go to the entry to our application app.vue file, we could see that we've got this header component in the components folder in a source obviously, and this is what it looks like. This is basically this here. As you can see, this is what you saw at the start, except that we don't actually have the live search functionality at the moment, because that's the entire point of this tutorial. But anyway, the other one, food search, we go to that here. Here's the styling, just so you can see that. And yes, we got this input, but does it do anything at the moment? Yeah, so we will be adding more to this file throughout this tutorial so that we can actually get the live search functionality to work. You also got this global style sheet here, which imports the Poppins font that we apply to every element by default, and some other stuff so that we remove the browser's default styling, so that styling is uniform across browsers. And the way that we apply global styling in Vue, I don't know if you already knew, but basically you go to the file that mounts the Vue instance to the real DOM, and we just import it here, and then that will apply it to our entire Vue application. I've also got a backend. The backend is located here on a folder that I've created, and I've actually got this in a new VS Code instance, and this is simply the backend folder that you just saw, but it's just opened in this folder specifically. Basically, what we have got is, this may look complicated to you, but don't worry, I'll explain it all line by line. We have got a script here called start that we created ourselves. NodeMon is something that you need to restore if you haven't already. Basically, it just restarts the server every time we make changes to the server file, so that changes automatically get represented without us having to restart the server manually. So you need to install it like that if you haven't already, but it's likely that you have if you're watching this tutorial. And then what we'll do is we'll say npm, because we've already served up our Angular local server using npm run serve on the actual Angular application, which is how we get it loaded here. But as for the backend, we need to run that start script, and this will say connected to this will say to text, but it will start on port 3000. And the reason as to why it will start on port 3000 is because we set it here app.listen, and this is just for if you are using somebody else's remote server, then they will set an environment variable for you to determine what port they want to use. But if that hasn't been initialized for something, as it hasn't here, then we'll use port 3000. And then when our application is hosted on port 3000 local server, we'll log this, which is the reason why we just saw it getting logged to the console. Other than that though, what else have we got? Well, we've required both express and mongoose, or imported, it's the same thing, in common JS, which is this syntax. So yeah, obviously we need to install them. What else have we got? We've got this schema, which is for our database. I'll explain that in a second. Obviously, again, we need to import mongoose to create this schema, and then we import a model, which will it will create a collection called fruits, because that automatically gets pluralized, and it can't have any capital letters. And then we import this model here. This is the model import. As for what this is the actual data that will go into the collection. And as you can see, it's simply an array of strings where each value is a different fruit. So we import this this top one, and then what we do, we connect to Mongoose on a database called fruit live search. We, as a second argument, we have this object, and that just solves some deprecation warnings. May not need to do that in the future, but as of recording this video, you do need to do this to avoid those deprecation warnings. And then what we do is we initialize the constant. It says mongoose.connection. So we can say if there is an error, then we'll log that to the console because we need to see what error has occurred. And then we got this interesting part here where we say when we open our Mongoose database, we log this automatically. However, if we search our model and there is more than one document, so there isn't no documents in our collection basically, then we will return. So we won't proceed because we don't need to submit anything to our collection. However, obviously if we got nothing in there, then we need to submit to the collection. And what data do we submit to the collection? Well, it's this data that's contained here. However, if you actually look at the schema, it says name. So that's how the documents are formatted. So, but this is just an array of strings, and they need to be, each string value needs to be assigned to this name field. So how do we do that? Basically, we create an empty array here, and then we loop through the array that we imported up there. Remember, that's the array of strings. Loop through that with for each, and then we say push, so add a new item to the end of this array. And what is the new item not adding? It's this object, and it has that name field, and then the string value goes in there. So perfect formatting to be, so this array will contain documents that are in the correct format to be submitted to our fruits collection. And then once we've got submit fruits, because this loops over, we will say insert many, put that array in there. If there, and then we'll create a callback function. If there's an error, then we will, if there is an error, then we'll log that error, else we will say success. As you can see, when we started our server here, we never got any of those things logged, and that's because this was met here, so we never proceeded. And we met this because if we launch up MongoD for a second, just that we got a MongoDB server live and running. I'll launch up a new terminal here. I'll say Mongo, and then I'll say show DBS. Whoops. Actually, now I'll just say use fruit live search because you already know the database name as I just showed you here. And then we'll say show collection. As you can see, fruits, here's a collection name there. And then we'll say db.fruits.find everything in there. As you can see, we've got everything added to our database, in our collection already, in our fruits collection. And then we'll say type it. So as you can see, this is everything formatted correctly. It automatically adds these IDs. That's something that MongoDB automatically does for us. It cannot have a document without a unique ID, basically. But this name field comes directly from us. So yeah, that's the reason why we're not getting that, because we've already got, well, obviously you could see we've got way more than one document in this collection already. We'll close this now for now because we don't need it. We'll leave this backend server live and running. And I'll actually delete this. You will find more about that later on. I'll just delete that now because we need to create that together. And what we'll do is we will say on this input we will have an event handler. And I should also mention that we're using the composition API for this tutorial, but it doesn't really matter because if you know Vue, the options API, which is the standard option for Vue that everyone used before the composition API came out, then it shouldn't take too long for you to learn the composition API because it's the same principles. I'm only using the composition API here just because it's the most new version, and in the future it probably will be the most adopted, the most common approach. So we're just using it here for future proofing. But anyway, the composition API is identified by the setup method, which contains pretty much all of the logic. So what we'll say is we will create that search method, which gets called every time we release our key on input. And then we'll take in the event like so. And what we'll need to do, we'll need to return this so that we can actually use it in the view template of the single file component. So we'll return it like so. As you can see, we're no longer getting an error there. And what we'll do is we will get access to what we typed in into the search, into this input. So what we'll say let search equals e.target. So e.target is this actual input element, because target is the element that triggered the event, which is this input. And then we'll say value, so whatever we typed in there, the value that it currently holds, in other words. And then we'll say trim. The reason why we're saying trim is that we don't get unnecessary white space. So the white space on the beginning and end of search will automatically be deleted. And then we'll just log that just for testing purposes. So we'll go to inspect element, console.log. So as you can see, we're getting this in now, and it's in real time. So it was working, and yeah. So the white space isn't showing up. It's showing up here, but not the fact that we got white space before the string actually begins, and that's down to the trim method that we used. What we'll now need to do, I won't do it here, but I'll just show you because I won't do it here because I've already got it installed. But anyway, we'll need to npm I AJAX because we will currently be making a post request to our backend server, and AJAX is a good dependency because it's got good compatibility rates, and it simplifies the old XML HTTP request object. It makes it more like the fetch API, but fetch API has got worse compatibility to AJAX, which is the reason why we'll be using AJAX, and we'll import it here after we've installed it, like so. And we will move this console.log, we'll replace it with AJAX.post, and we'll send a post request to /API/search. This is the endpoint that we will send a post request to on our backend. And what data will we send on the body of the post request? Well, that will be search, our search query, so that we can use it to query our database based on what we are searching. Then when we get a response from the server, at the moment we'll just log this so we can see how our server is responding. So obviously we need to go to our backend now, and what we'll say app.post, because this is to handle a post request, the one that we're sending on the key up event handler, and that was the endpoint. So we'll get access to the request and response like so, and then we'll say we'll simply send back the rec.body.search like so. And the reason being it's search is because basically we just included a value here, and this is just shorthand for this. If we just had a variable on an object like so, but you know, again it's shorthand, so we'll just leave it like that. And everything that we send on the body is automatically in the body object here, so that's the reason why we get access to the search query like so, and then we simply just send that back immediately back to the front end. And if we actually try and see this, it shouldn't actually work. Don't worry, I prepared for this. Okay, it's working. Okay, I'm going to restart. I think it's because, yeah. So I'm going to run npm serve again, and the reason being is because that config, npm run serve like so. It's because that config file, and you need to restart your V server every time you modify that config file. So if I refresh now, it shouldn't actually work. Yeah, as I suspected as such, and the reason being is because it was due to that config file, and basically because they're on different ports, we either do this, because remember our backend was on port 3000, so if we do this, it should actually work. Let me just see. Okay, it's not actually working because we're getting cross-origin request blocked method. Now we could solve that by an npm package called cause. But yeah, it's because we're sending it to localhost 3000 already, and we're on a localhost. So we're sending from localhost to localhost, which by default that behavior is prevented, which is the reason why we're getting an error. But essentially, what we will do is we will do something called proxying, and we will proxy or request with starting with /API to our localhost.3000, and not only will this solve the cause error, cross-origin request error, it will also make it so that we can just generally connect our backend to frontend a lot easier, and this will come in handy when we actually get to hosting our application, both frontend and backend, on a remote server, because we could simply just change the proxying endpoint in this file to link up to our backend, whichever server that is, wherever that is hosted, basically. So we'll just change it in this file, and then things will work. So again, like I said, we will proxy or request starting with /API to our backend, which is hosted on localhost on port 3000. So we could add that in on target. Like so, and then we say change origin to be true, so that we go to here now, localhost 3000. And so yeah, this should work. Obviously, we need to restart things because we changed this file now. Well, we didn't change it, but we created it. So it's now registered. We need to press npm run serve again. Okay, dev start is not allowed. I don't know what's... Yeah, that's not dev start. So I'm getting sloppy here, but yeah, that should be a dev server. So we'll say npm run serve again, like so, and this should work now. And now if we go back and then we click, and yes, as you can see, we are getting a response now, finally. I know that was a bit of a detour for you guys, but it's working now, so you don't have to worry anymore. Got there in the end. What we'll now do is we'll now actually we'll actually query our backend, and to do this, we'll need to make this an async, because obviously it takes a while for our database to respond to our request to it. So we need to make this async to wait for it. So we'll say let find. Find will be the result of our query. And then what we'll find, well, we will search on the name field. Remember, the field that contains the name of everything, and then we'll use this regex modifier. I believe they're called query operators, something like that. So that we can query using a regular expression, and we create the regular expression like so. We'll use the I flag, and that's the second argument of this reg exp method. I flag means case insensitive, so it doesn't matter whether we're using uppercase or lower cases, it will match on both. And we'll say anything can come before, so we'll use full stop or period if you're American, whatever, so that any character can come before and any number of it, which is asterisk. Full stop is any character, asterisk is any number of it, and that includes white space, by the way. And then, so we'll put search in the middle so that anything can come before it, anything can come after it, but essentially, oh yeah, actually, sorry, we need to actually define search. So instead of this, we need to actually assign it to our search query, just so that it's a lot easier. And then we'll say limit to 10 so that we never get more than 10 results back. And then we'll say execute so that we can actually run the query. So that's that, not too complicated, I hope. And then we'll simply say res.send find, we'll send find back like so. And so now, because we're still logging this, we should hopefully get, so we say Apple. As you can see, we're getting back 10 results, so that's the maximum amount allowed. And it should be in data, not config. So as you can see, we're getting all A's there. Let me type in something like pineapple. As you can see, we're getting our results. I mean, it's easier if I show you later on, but essentially, you know, this is all working correctly. And we now need to work. We need to finish working in this then callback. So what we need to do is we need to import reactive from view, and this is how you create. Well, you can either use the useref hook, but that's normally for primitive data types. But use the reactive hook in view to in the composition API. Sorry, obviously not in the options API. You use the data method then. But for this, we will create the state like so. And obviously when the value of the state changes, so this here created with the reactive hook, our component will re-render and we will create 2 pieces of state. Search results, which will take in the result of querying our database. It's the result that our backend sent back to us, and then we'll say no search. And this is simply a boolean, and basically what this is it will tell us whether we've actually entered something into our input or whether we've deleted all values. Again, this will make more sense later on, and we'll need to export this so that we can use it in our template. So we'll say if search is equal to just an empty string. So then if that is true, then we'll say state dot no search equals false. So yeah, true. So okay, that's wrong. I don't know why I said false, but yeah, so that is true because we haven't entered anything, as you can see. So we've currently got no characters whatsoever in our search, in our input, probably because we've pressed delete on every character, and that was the result of us releasing our key. It was us releasing our key on the delete key to delete the characters. That's the most likely situation for this if condition being met. If it is met, then we'll simply change this boolean to true, and then we'll return so that we don't continue in this callback. So if this if condition isn't met because we haven't met the return key, then we'll say state.no search equals false. Again, we need to tell that it's false now because it retains its value from the last re-render, so that we need to say that it's false now, because if the previous re-render set it to be true, then it's no longer true if that if condition was passed. And then what we'll say state dot search result equals res.data. Remember, data contained the array of documents, and we'll need to leap through or use the map method on this array, and the reason being is because we want search results to just be a standard array of strings, and this is an array of documents. And sorry, I keep getting this wrong. It's an array of documents where the individual strings are contained in the name property. So what we're doing here is we're saying, well, map returns a new array, and we're saying assign the whatever this map method returns to the state, and this will simply return an array of strings, and each item will be the result of the name property of each document. So essentially we're just stripping the name out of the document that it was contained in and just having it on its own, but the array will be the same length as the array here. Obviously it will just be strings instead of documents. And then after that we'll say catch, just in case there is an error. Hopefully there won't be, there really shouldn't be. But anyway, just in case there is, I don't know why I keep getting this wrong. But yeah, we'll need to throw an error just so that we can stop our application, because clearly there is an error and that's not good. I don't know what is going on here, but yeah, so that's wrong as well. I keep on getting this wrong. I don't know what's going on. But yes, so static state, we need to return that so we can use it, and this should be good. Obviously this isn't going to do anything at the moment, we need to work in our template. So we'll actually create a new template element, like so. Okay, that doesn't work for some reason. Okay, that's kind of annoying. But yeah, template, just so that it doesn't get rendered to the DOM. And the reason being is the reason why we're using template is because we only want search results to be rendered, which will be contained inside here, if certain conditions are met. So we could say v if, like so, use that if directive from view, state dot no search equals to false. So we have actually entered something, because remember it only gets sent to true if the if condition is met, and we haven't searched anything. And state dot search result dot length is greater than 0, so we have got results back. If we've got results back, then obviously I want to show those results. So we will use the search item class. Again, just take note of this, that we have already started this out, just so that we don't waste time for this tutorial. So we'll create a search item div, and then we will loop through it. And what we'll do, sorry, that's wrong, I don't know what is going on here. So yeah, so v4 equals result, so this is the individual strings and also the index as well. Index, so that we can assign it to the key in a second. In state dot search result, and that should be the array. And then we'll say key, because each item that's being rendered out in the loop needs to have a key, a unique key property. So we just assign it into index, and that will be unique, obviously, because it goes, it just goes up by 1 on each successive item. And then what we'll say is we'll add a horizontal wall, but only if we don't want a horizontal wall for the very first item. So we'll say v-if index greater than 0, so that because index starts at 0, we say if it's greater than the first one. So if it's not the first one, basically the very first item that's being rendered out. As for this, we'll just render it out for every single item and result. So that's just a string, remember, because it's an array of strings, so we can just write it out in plain terms like that. And what we'll need to do an adjacent template, and this will be rendered out if a different condition is met. I don't know what's going on here. It's kind of annoying, but it is what it is. Yeah, so we'll say v else if, and then we'll say if state dot no search. If state dot no search is also false, but we haven't got any results. So if we have entered in something but we haven't got any results, then we need to tell the user that basically they've entered in something which hasn't been. Whoops. Yeah, they haven't. Yeah, sorry, no results. Basically, found 0. And then if none of these conditions are met, then we just show nothing, because clearly they've left the input, the search result blank. So refresh. So as you can see, this is basically it now. So press enter, nothing. Apple, pineapple. So yeah, this is what we've got. This is literally the entire tutorial. If you have any queries, then don't hesitate to post it in the comments box below, and I'll try and help you to the best of my ability. I'll be happy to do that. And also appreciate it if you liked and subscribe, because I put in a lot of effort into making this video. Also comment if you want to, if you want me to do this with the options API. It shouldn't be too different. It's not really going to be a radically different tutorial, but just comment if you want that. But anyway, most importantly, guys, be sure to like and subscribe, and have a great day, and peace out.